All right, guys, so I'm back. I think we're on chapter 7. This is a few hours from when I recorded my last one. So I want to point out one more thing in chapter 6 before I move on to chapter 7. If you look at the beginning, I think it's that second sentence. It's describing, it says, Setha was licked, tasted, eaten by beloved's eyes. And so we have, this is something I kind of want you to be thinking about. We have this, it's called synesthesia. It's where Morrison mixes the senses. So she has eyesight and she has taste here that she's mixing together. And I want you to keep in mind, because as we look into chapter 7, we're going to see the past and memory being personified and characterized as something that's hungry, something that has this never-ending hunger and desire to devour. And we see similar characteristics with Beloved. And so I want you to be thinking about, how is Morrison setting up not just Beloved as Setha's dead child who has come back, but really is more even a representation of the past and symbolic of history and memory and the past, and how what happens with Beloved is serving to build upon and develop some of these themes of the effect of the past on our present. So if we look at chapter 7, we're going to see Setha's house, right? We learn about a little bit about the history of 124. We know that it was a way station. This serves as, it has a double meaning, right? It's a treasured salvation for ex-slaves who needed help and a safe passage. And so, the literal way station, it was kind of a spot on their way to freedom, but then also an earthly dwelling place for a wandering spirit, right? Beloved's resting place after crossing the bridge to return from the afterlife. And speaking of this bridge, right, she mentions this on page 77 near the top. She says, she told me when I was at the bridge, she told me. So Beloved said that she crossed a bridge on her way to Setha's house, right? It's a symbol for the bridge between the death and the spiritual world and then life, okay? Beloved crossed over. And this brings me up, I want you guys to be thinking, remember, for the IOP, which we're working toward at the end of the semester, some of the best presentations that I've seen have been when students see something similarly developed in two different works. For instance, right? We have water, which is heavily symbolic throughout Beloved so far. We have Beloved coming out of the water. We have the river that represents slavery from freedom, right? And we saw water as deeply symbolic in Hamlet as well, with the drowning of Ophelia, right? And so I've seen some really powerful comparisons of how water is used by Shakespeare and how it's used by Morrison for similar or differing reasons. We're going to have water is going to be incredibly important in the things they carried. When we get to that, there's going to be a river in the things they carried in one of the short stories. That's symbolic of kind of two different places, two different decisions. And so I'd be thinking, as we're reading through this and as you're tracking some of these symbols and motifs, be thinking about connections to Hamlet and what some of these specific topics are that you might want to explore further, okay? And so we have, as we keep going through chapter 7, we're going to see more details of some rough circumstances and occurrences with both Setha and Paul D. Okay, we're going to learn a little bit more about Hallie, right? We're going to learn a little bit more about what happened with Setha and school teacher, okay? So we know on page 81, right, we learn a little bit more about Setha's sexual assault, right? How school teachers sexually assaulted her, right? He and his nephews. And specifically, think about it, she was still nursing at the time, and it says multiple times, right, that they stole her milk. And that's what she keeps coming back to, right? That's the detail that we keep hearing her come back to. The fact that, as a mother, remember, this text can be read, one of the major themes is motherhood and the relationship between a mother and her children. We learned more about Setha's mother and how she would just cast aside her babies who were victims of rape, right? And then we see Setha with her children, right? And Setha, the detail that bothered her the most about being assaulted by a school teacher was that the one thing she could give her children, right? She didn't have freedom. She didn't have her own life. She had no agency of her own, right? All she could give her children was her milk, was all that she had. And the fact that they stole that from her, her ability to provide her children, her child's sustenance, right? That was what stuck with her. That was what for her was more traumatizing, was more, it stayed with her. It was the reason she wanted to escape so badly, because that crossed a line for her. Her ability, taking away her ability to care for her child, that is what brought her over the edge, okay? And then we find out, right, on page 81, we find out Paul D says that Hallie saw the whole thing. He saw this assault, right? He witnessed it. It says, the day I came in here, you said they stole your milk. I never knew it was that messed him up. That was it, I guess. All I knew was that something broke him. Not a one of them years of Saturdays, Sundays, and nighttime extra never touched him. But whatever he saw go on in that barn that day broke him like a twig. Talking about Hallie, right? How he had given up his weekends, given up all of his days off to buy his mother's freedom, right? To buy baby Sug's freedom. But it was seeing that happen to his wife, and he didn't do anything, right? That's what set this is. He just saw it. He didn't do anything, right? That, after all of the years of abuse, after all of the years of slavery, that is what broke him, of what he witnessed happen to his wife, right? And what's interesting, one of the most powerful passages, right? Kind of from 82 to 84. If we look at the bottom of 82, Sethe says, she shook her head from side to side, resigned to her rebellious brain, right? Again, she's talking about the nature of memory here. Her brain, her mind, her memory does not listen to her. These memories come up without asking for them, right? The idea of PTSD, they come back without us thinking about it, without us wanting them back, right? She calls it her rebellious brain, all right? Why was there nothing it refused? No misery, no regret, no hateful picture too rotten to accept. Like a greedy child, it snatched up everything, reminiscent of beloved, right? Just once could it say, no, thank you. I just ate and can't hold another bite, right? So again, equating memory with this idea of this insatiable hunger, right? And then if we go down to the bottom, it says, but her brain was not interested in the future. Loaded with the past and hungry for more, it left her no room to imagine, let alone plan for, the next day. Exactly like that afternoon in the Wild Onions, when one more step was the most she could see of the future. Other people went crazy, why couldn't she? Other people's brains stopped, turned around, and went on to something new, which is what must have happened to Hallie. And how sweet that would have been, the two of them, back by the milk shed, squatting by the churn, smashing cold, lumpy butter into their faces with not a care in the world, feeling it slippery, sticky, rubbing it in their hair, watching it squeeze through their fingers. What a relief to stop it right there. Close, shut, squeeze the butter. But her 3 children were chewing sugar teat under a blanket on their way to Ohio, and no butter play would change that. So again, we have this motif of motherhood. She wishes she could give up. She wishes she could do what Hallie did and let it get to her and let it break her and let her just live the rest of her days in just the ignorant bliss, right? Just not thinking about anything, just letting it go. But what keeps her from doing that? The fact that she has her kids she's got to take care of. She has that responsibility to take care of her kids. Hallie, that wasn't enough. But Sethe, she keeps going for her kids, right? Despite the fact that she would want to be there with him. Okay, and this is another really, really solid IOP topic that I've seen is looking at mental illness, right? We saw it in Hamlet, we saw it with Hamlet, we saw it with Ophelia, we saw it arguably some of the different characters, right? And then we see it here with Hallie. So looking at the source of these mental illnesses and kind of the mental breaks and how certain traumatic events can lead to that and how both of these authors handle it. right? Handle this topic. I really wish I was there so we could have a discussion on this. I'm very, very sad that I'm not actually there to discuss this text with you because this is one of my favorite ones to discuss. So I'm bummed out about that, but I got to keep going because I'm running out of time. 5 more minutes. Okay, so if we keep going, right, we see on here we learn a little bit more about Paul D, right? We get some more details about how he couldn't respond to Hallie when he was in that situation because he had a bit in his mouth, right? One of the forms of punishment was putting a bit, just like a horse, in his mouth. So that kept him from being able to talk, right? From being able to honestly do anything. It was taking away his humanity. It was equating him, putting him on the same level or a lesser level than an animal, right? And he talks about, right, on page 85, he talks about how the thing that bothered him the most was the roosters, right? Walking past the roosters, looking at them, look at me. And he talks about one particular rooster, right? His name was Mr. And Mr., he says, when I saw Mr., I knew it was me too, not just them, me too, right? Mr., he looked, this is the top of page 86. He says, Mr., he looked so free, better than me, stronger, tougher, son of a biatch. Couldn't even get the shell by himself, but he was still king, and I was, right? Fill in the blank. Look at how she's using the ellipses here. Look at how she's formatting her sentences, right? She keeps going on. Paul D says, Mr. was allowed to be and stay what he was, but I wasn't allowed to be and stay what I was. Even if you cooked him, you'd be cooking a rooster named Mr. But wasn't no way I'd ever be Paul D again, living or dead. School teacher changed me. I was something else, and that something was less than a chicken sitting in the sun on a tub. And it says Setha put her hand on his knee and rubbed. This is going back to the motif of the healing touch. What do you say? What do you say when someone tells you this? There's nothing you can say, right? And so we have again the idea of touching, of human touch, of that physical touch, bringing healing, because words can't sometimes, right? And Paul D, this issue of manhood, right? He doesn't know who he is, right? He's been told his whole life. Mr. Garner's been the one, who's told him what it means to be a man. But he has here, right? Mr. Garner's gone at this point, and he doesn't know what it means. He doesn't know, right? He doesn't know where his manhood. He doesn't know he's given fewer rights than this rooster, right? He's literally treated as less than an animal. How do you deal with that, right? And this is what Paul D does. He talks about his tobacco tin heart, right? He says he would keep the rest of it where it belonged, right? Before this, he says saying more might push them both to a place they couldn't get back from. He would keep the rest where it belonged, in that tobacco tin buried in his chest where a red heart used to be. Its lid rusted shut. He would not pray it loose now in front of this sweet, sturdy woman, for if she got a whiff of the contents, it would shame him. And it would hurt her to know that there was no red heart, bright as Mr.'s comb, beating in him. Okay, so we have, Morrison references lots of different metals, right? We have the tin heart here, the tin can. We have earlier talked about, Setha's iron eyes that were punched out, okay? So be looking at how she's using the different kind of metals through this as well. But then also we have red, right? This color motif, again, the color red, right? Going with the red heart. Paul D chooses to deal with his traumatic memories by putting them in this tin box, right, this tin can, and putting it away, and he doesn't want to deal with it. He wants to save himself from more pain by locking it all up, right? And Setha at the bottom, she says, nothing better than to start the day's serious work of beating back the past. So she's living her day, right? Every day she's just beating back the past. She doesn't want to remember it. Memories come flooding in without her asking for it, right? But all she does is she's living each day trying to beat back those memories. And Paul D just puts them in his tobacco tin heart, puts it away. He doesn't even want to go there. He wants to suppress everything. He wants to just put it away. He doesn't want to deal with it. So again, a huge part of this text is looking at how Morrison is showing how to deal with the past, how to deal with traumatic memories. How do you confront these? How do you deal with them? I'm running out of time. So I'm going to leave these questions for these chapters up here, and I'll see you guys soon.